All right, I am here with Sam Waters, the founder of Middle Ground, something or other. Okay, yeah, Sam is a friend of mine who came to me because he was looking for help with his job search while also launching this side business. Kind of always been thinking about like doing more creative art kind of work, and just wanted to take it more seriously and do more with it. So thank you very much for joining, Sam.
Happy to be here and happy to be representing Middle Ground Design.
Design. That's how you end it. Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah. So Sam, could you just talk a little bit about like what was going on in your life that kind of made you realize like, okay, I could use some help here.
Yeah, certainly. So we've been working together for about a month
Yep.
as of recording.
Yes.
And about 6 months ago, I got laid off from a job that I had only been at for about 6 months. So that meant that I was back on the job hunt for the second time in actually about a year to the day I got laid off. Uh, it's been a challenging first half of the year, and I reached out to you a little bit over halfway, a little bit over the midpoint between then. It was like, I don't know, maybe a month, 2 months ago. So that meant that I had been on the job search for a couple of months. And anybody who's been on a job search knows that is a time of great uncertainty. It is a time of great stress. And it is also sometimes a time of opportunity in a way that feels counterintuitive, right? You're not typically granted so much free time that's unstructured that you can use to either do productive sounding things like look for jobs or do fun things like work on your art business or projects for your friends or projects around the house. Um, and so that's a lot of stuff that I was feeling in the spring. And for me, that was a little overwhelming because that's getting pulled in a lot of directions, right? There's like something that I really should do, look for a job, which feels not fun. If anybody's had a job search before knows that that is a painful and discouraging experience, but high importance. And then I was also had on the other hand a bunch of stuff that was really fun to work on and felt very rewarding, my art and projects and what have you. But that was relatively lower importance to me. And so I when I reached out to you specifically, I was feeling at a loss for how to balance those competing interests because I knew that something was important and I didn't want to do it. I knew that this other thing was not as important, but I really did want to do it. And I had this hypothesis that there ought to be a way to balance these things such that the stuff that I like to do can serve as a sort of energetic engine
Mm.
to help power me through the stuff that I don't want to do, but have to do because I have a young daughter and a family. There are things that must be paid for, and gotta find a new job. So
Responsibilities and bills are real. Yes.
yeah, so that's kind of what I was feeling was like, how do I rebalance this?
Yeah. And what was that? What was that like exactly? Like, did you have the situation like whatever you're doing, you're like, well, I should be doing this other thing instead? Or like, what was it like to kind of be in that space?
Yeah, I was sort of constantly like that. You know, one of the things that's true about a job search, at least for me, is that it's hard to structure that time because it's relatively easy, at least for me at this point, to apply to a job if one looks interesting and I think I'm qualified for it. I can bang out that resume and send that over. But that's not all the time. And I don't see all the jobs that are out there. So like, what do you do when you're looking for a job 8 hours a day? Like that there's not enough stuff to do to fill that time. Um, or rather, I didn't know what I should be doing. Like, what are the motions to go through, really, other than like, hey, I saw a job today. Guess I'll apply to it. Hey, I didn't see a job today. Guess I'll not do that. Guess I'll scroll LinkedIn aimlessly for a while.
Yeah.
Um, so that meant that when I was supposed to be doing job stuff, which is a very big nebulous header, I always wanted to be down in the basement working on whatever project I had going. And then I would maybe go get lunch, then, oh, maybe I'll do some basement time. Then I'm down in the basement and I'm thinking, well, I didn't get anything done during my job search portion of the day. And so I shouldn't be, there's a sort of a guilt both ways. Like, or rather there's like longing and then there's guilt where I'm in the morning, I'm longing to not be doing the thing. And in the afternoon when I'm doing something fun, I feel guilt for not having made sufficient progress on my job search. Uh, and I'll capstone all that with this this sense that I still have sometimes, but don't believe to be true, which is it can feel in a job search like if you end the day and you didn't get a job, that like you failed, like you didn't
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
That's the only goal, right? It's like get a job.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I remember talking to you about when we first got together was like I had a lack of proximate goals, so to speak. Like I didn't know what good intermediary goals would be for
Yeah.
a rubric that would say, okay, but by these criteria at the end of the morning session or at the end of the day, I did good. And
Yeah.
I can breathe
Yeah.
easy and I can go play.
Yeah.
That's good. That's what I was feeling.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. It's like, I mean, that's a rough day to go for the day. It's like I go from longing to guilt, and then it's time for bed. Like, oh man. And I'm sure there's some other good stuff in there too. You know, there's other things happening, but yeah, that is like an overarching kind of summary. And what was, and we can get into, yeah, like the more of those goals that help you, like you were saying, when it's just about getting a job and it's just about like applying to what's there, it's a very reactive place, right? It's a very like you've got no power in the situation. It's all up to what was posted on the job boards and like what emails you get saying congratulations, you have a job. And until that one happens, then you can't feel good, so you're kind of trapped in this like, cool, so I'll just like be unhappy until I get a job. Sweet, that's a great way to live. Yeah, so I can get into more of like what we did that helps with that stuff. But also, before we get to that, what was like, was there was there a moment that you were like, okay, maybe I should like reach out for help here?
Hmm. Not so much a lightning bolt moment, I wouldn't say, but a build up, I think,
Yeah.
would be, I would say that. And that manifested in a series of events. Like the kinds of stuff that led to that build up are things like, I find myself on a evening walk with my wife, and I'm spending a lot of the time, you know, for lack of a better term, grousing about how like I am despondent and I have no prospects, right? Like that's not a good way that I want to be when I'm with my loved ones, right? Like that's not the kind of time I want to be spending with my wife. Not that I, not that like we, it's good. Part of that is good because like we're talking and it's healthy. It's good for me to be able to, feel that support from her. But like to be constantly for that to be my refrain felt bad. Like I have no good narrative about this. Um, and related, she advised me or she offered up a couple times like, well, if you're really feeling kind of despondent like this, like there are people you can talk to that will help you sort through some of these feelings, like if you want to do therapy, like I'm totally in supportive of that. And so she kind of brought up the notion of, raising your hand, asking for help. So that, I didn't immediately run to your door after that, but sort of that kind of stuff started to build and planted the seed of like, not really, this isn't like this old feeling that like, doesn't really feel good. Like this isn't going that well. Even if there are high points, like I finished a project and it's really cool and I'm really excited about it. Like that's fine. There are like cycles of product of happiness and things like that. But overall, the feeling was, it was kind of like a buildup of like, oh shit, I've been doing this for like 4 months and don't feel too good, and I still don't have a job. Like, I want to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, cool. And then what made you come to me over like a career coach or like all the other people out there that could have done something?
Yeah, so where might I have gone, right? So therapy is, those are people you can talk to when you are having difficult problems to work through. it didn't, and it hasn't all along really felt to me like a problem that I associate with therapy. And I don't have a ton of experience with therapy. I'm sure there are therapists that have a wide range of expertise and help people with lots of different stuff. Uh, for me, like I'm not, I didn't feel like I was kind of, existentially down, or I guess therapy felt like too much of an escalation to me. Again, I don't have a lot of background with what therapy is actually like, but that didn't seem like the right kind of fit. A career coach, uh, I've never worked with a career coach, but the prospect, I don't know if it even occurred to me, but like I would associate that with like, oh, we're going to talk about my professional skills and what the landscape is like and kinds of roles that I might look into. And like, I'm actually okay at that. Assessing my skills and thinking creatively about that kind of stuff. But obviously you and I have known each other for a little while. And so on one hand, you're a person in the world who I know and might turn to, right? That's easier than reaching out to a stranger. But and we talked initially. I was like, hey Brian, what's your deal? What's this life coaching? What's this coaching stuff that you do? And then you like pointed me to your website also to learn a little bit more about what you do. And you framed it as mindset coaching. And that resonated with me as sort of the right kind of fix for what I was in, because my mindset was like I was kind of in a morass, so I was kind of stymied.
Yeah.
And so it was, I guess that struck me as the right kind of slice of how to, or I guess the right angle by which to approach the problem. It's like,
yeah,
I don't think I lack skills. I don't think I lack creativity.
yeah,
I don't think I lack really opportunity or like ways to fill my day, like, or self-esteem. Like none of that was missing. It was like, why aren't these all working together? Why is this like kind of grinding on each other? And that seemed like a mindset problem.
Okay, cool. Yeah, like, is there anything more specific of like what like that mindset piece meant to you, or it's just about like, wait, I got these things that I just can't make work together? Like, is there anything more to that, or that's pretty much it?
Um, yeah, I mean, that's largely it. I mean, more specifically, like when I think about things like the anecdote I was just telling earlier about not having proximate goals and not knowing what a good day's work counted as.
Yeah.
Like that's a mindset problem, because obviously it's not the case that the only success you can mark in a job search is getting a job.
Yeah.
Like I feel that way sometimes, but I don't think that is true.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that means that that's dissonance, right, between like what I'm feeling emotionally as the day goes on and, oh shit, I got another rejection. Screw me. Like and so when in a situation like that where there's dissonance between what I'm feeling and what I know to be true, or what I think logically, like that strikes me as a mindset problem, because you're like, I'm not talking to myself. I'm not taking myself seriously. I'm not internally consistent. Um, and yeah, and so the idea of like a new mindset, part of it was one thing that appealed to me about talking to somebody. Another thing was like having a little bit of accountability, um, is something that I also associate with coaching.
Yeah.
What does a coach help you do? I think a coach can help you with changing your mindset or your basketball shot or whatever. But a coach also helps you keep you on track of like saying like, hey, you said you were going to do this thing. How'd that go?
Yeah.
How did that feel? What would you do differently? Right? Like even a little bit of somebody not even pushing back, but like somebody being like somebody to play off of, and somebody who like another brain that's attuned to your problem that you can interact with, can be powerful.
Sweet. Okay, cool. That makes sense. And what were your goals for the coaching? What were you hoping to get out of it?
Yeah, I was hoping that by doing a little bit of coaching, I would be able to have proximate goals for my job search, but by which I mean a set of you know, metrics or activities or criteria that I could check off at the end of a session or at the end of a day or at the end of a week, by which I would be able to say, I did what I wanted to do today. Like, what is the motion that I should be going through each day
Yeah.
that I believe will lead me to success? Or at the very least, this is a term I've learned recently, like increase my like luck surface area. Have you heard this term?
Oh no. Okay.
It's like the more people I talk to, the more job applications I do, the more companies I know about, the more I'm out there, the greater my surface area is to be able to detect and act on opportunities.
Yes.
And that's, I think, what needs to happen in a job search. So for me, big part of it was like, let's get a set of like a motion that I can repeat. Like in sales, they talk about a sales motion, a repeatable sales motion. And that's like, you know, I find this kind of company, I have this kind of communication, I do this kind of follow-up, I do this kind of stuff to close. I prove this kind of value, this kind of value. I needed a job search motion.
Yeah.
So that was one. And then by virtue of having that, my goal was to be able to enjoy a sort of guilt-free other aspect, to take away the guilt from other aspects of my life, specifically this notion that you mentioned at the beginning of middle ground design, which is this sort of art and gifting practice that I've had for a long time. I have sort of delusions of grandeur that might become something that looks more like a business down the line. And so part of reducing the kind of guilt factor from my job search was, let's free up some of my time to guilt-free spend giving attention to something that is exciting to me and nourishing to me and kind of energy giving to me. I mentioned earlier that I think of a job search, I think part of a job search or a time of unemployment can be an opportunity. Like, you don't usually get that much time off. In fact, I'd rather not have that much time off. But if I'm gonna have it, I might as well. It's like, but if somebody came to you and they said, hey, I'm gonna give you 6 months off and I'm gonna pay you for that whole time, you'd take that in a second. So there is an opportunity there. But it's just in tension with your feelings of anxiety. And so I didn't want to squander that opportunity. Even if it's not, I'm going to bootstrap this business and it's going to be the next thing that I do to support my family for the next 30 years. Like, I wanted, so you asked what I was looking to get out of coaching. And so there's this piece about like having control over my job search. And then the other half of that was freeing freeing myself from the guilt of needing to be doing job search stuff while I was doing middle ground work, but also then what can I do to dial up the intention on that practice a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, historically that's a pretty catch as catch can kind of practice for me. I have an idea of a gift I want to make for somebody, I make it and I give it to them, and that's a joyful, wonderful part of my life. But I have ideas about, you know, ways that I might transform that into something that looks more like a business, and so I wanted to sort of try that a little bit.
Yeah.
And be a little bit intentional about it.
Yeah. Could you tell me a bit more about that part of it? Because like, yeah, it wasn't just to be able to work on this other thing guilt-free. It was also like, you know, this thing that you've been doing for a long time. And now it was like, well, let's actually make a run at, you know, not making it a billion-dollar business tomorrow, but making stuff for sale and just kind of like let's kind of take this from this, hey, back burner hobby that you do kind of when there's time, to like, no, I want to like make this more serious and more of a regular thing. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's about it. So my profession is that I work in software product management, and that's product development. And so that's we see a market opportunity, we see a group of customers, we see a solution, we're going to validate that solution and bring it to market and try and solve this problem for people. That's a structured way of thinking that I use in a professional setting all the time. And I actually have a fairly robust toolkit. I'm gesturing over to a bunch of books. Fairly robust toolkit of ways that you approach that kind of work. And that's been something that's important to me because it's how I get paid. And I know from that line of work that the way that I have historically done what I call doing middle ground stuff, which is this kind of gifting and making practice, doesn't look like that, right? It's not what I do. I don't, like, a lot of that is like, I have a clever idea, I design it, and then I build it, and then I surprise somebody with it, and it's a gift, and that's like how that works. But to transform, and so that means that to transform that gifting and making practice into something that looks more like a product design company, that would look different, that would feel different. There would be different modes of thinking, some of which would be physical. I would be, the production maybe would look different. It's different if you're making one shirt versus if you're making 50 shirts, I imagine. I still haven't made 50 shirts. But and then part of that's physical, like the space would change. But then part of that is mental. Some of the work would be talking about it on social media more, or thinking more about a strategy for what kinds of people I want to be talking to, and thinking about what kinds of products I want to be building for them. And so it would just feel differently. Yeah. And so that's stuff that we've talked about quite a bit. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Cool. And yeah, we can get to more of the middle ground stuff in a minute, but just going back to so the main bit with the job search is kind of like breaking down well, how can I have a successful day that isn't, I got a job? So can you talk about what helped with that? Was there any kind of mindset changes, or just what specifically you did there that helped you get to a place of being able to feel good about your job search and then move on to middle ground?
Yes. So where we landed is something that looks like, okay, Sam, your morning session, between daycare drop off and lunch, is for job search stuff. I say job search stuff, like I say middle ground stuff, right? It's big useless headers. And so what's that motion? Well, in our conversations, some of the stuff that we talked about and what we eventually landed on was something like, certainly you're going to be applying to any jobs that you see that look appealing. Okay, great. That's a given. That's kind of all I was doing before.
Yeah.
But what's refrain number one about looking for a job? It's like, you got to network. You got to be talking to people. And, prior to us working together, one of the things that was really valuable to me that I had been doing fairly regularly was reaching out to people in my network and having coffee chats with them. A lot of that was me having coffee chats with former coworkers or friends, because the other thing about being on a job search is that it's very lonely because nobody's around. And so it's nice to talk to people, even if they're not a professional connection. It's like, look, I got to talk to another human being or else I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah.
And so, in our conversations, we landed on a place that's like, great, those conversations are good and valuable. Let's keep those up and be consistent with those, and maybe increase the intensity or the intention on that a little bit by branching out more explicitly to people that are not in my network that I don't know. Or maybe they're in my network, but they were my boss's boss 5 years ago and I'm kind of intimidated by them, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that was big step one, was the consistency of those kind of networking conversations and the expansion of those conversations to people that I don't know.
Yeah.
And then the third piece has been, we worked on bringing a little bit of rigor to the like company research, market research piece of my job search, which is something like, what companies exist in the world? What are they doing? Are they big? Are they small? Do they seem cool? Do they seem stodgy? Are they hiring? Are they not? Are they hiring for a product manager? Might they in the future? So like getting an understanding of who's out there, certainly including and ideally people who are hiring, but also people who are not actively hiring, right? Because you kind of want to know about the companies in your space that might hire in the future, because you can follow them on LinkedIn, you can reach out to somebody there for an informational interview, you can, poke around their who works there on LinkedIn to figure out what their background is like. You can poke around on LinkedIn to see who their competitors are. So there's a bit of what I refer to as like alternately company research and like market mapping that forms the third leg of things that I consider to be good to do in a job search, which are basically like, have some kind of structure to how you are doing your company research. Use that structured research to identify companies who where you'd like to talk to somebody, like if you are in the solar energy space and you make a list of a bunch of solar energy companies that are in your area or what have you, now you've got a list of companies who you avowedly would like to talk to. Like they're interesting enough to you that you should be able to have a reasonable 20-minute, half-hour conversation with somebody if they were willing to give you the time of day. So by building that database of companies, then you've got a built-in database of basically people to reach out to for that kind of networking conversation. And then actually making that outreach, that's one KPI. And then actually having the meeting is another KPI, right? That's your funnel.
Yeah.
And so and then ultimately then the end of the funnel is like applying to a job. So, it's pretty analogous to like customer acquisition or sales, right? It's like you build a funnel, like what companies are out there, which ones are cool, who can I talk to, can I talk to them, is there a job? Like that's the end of the funnel. And that together has so that's the big picture of like what I'm trying to do. And that means that I can put specific tasks on my on my Trello board, so to speak, to say, okay, this week we're learning about solar energy. This week we're going to learn about e-waste. This week we're going to learn about this other industry. And then it's just, okay, let's find 20 companies that work in this space. Which ones seem interesting? Which one of them has somebody you want to talk to? Have you reached out to them? Have you had the actual conversation? Okay, great. That's a good flow. And so that out of that structure, you get several benefits. One, can sign off and feel good. Leading up to that, two, can have specific tasks that I can assign myself, such that when I sit down with my coffee in the morning, it's not a question of like, who wants to give me a job? It's a question of like, what am I doing today? I'm doing this. Okay, I'm going to do that. And then the third thing that it gives me is at the end of the week, a set of KPIs, a set of indicator numbers that I can look to and say, that's what I did this week. And that's around what I want to be doing. Or that's not as much that I want to be doing. Or that's way better than I want to be doing. You know what I mean? So like all that together has given me the kind of structure and accountability that I was looking for.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. It totally like what we were saying before, like gives you your power back in the situation, puts you more in a proactive role versus just reactive. And I'm just floating around, getting blown away by whatever opportunities might be there. And the like expanding your luck, expanding just ability for things to come at you or opportunities to happen. Because now, yeah, you're doing the outreach and you're expanding the companies that you do outreach for versus the like, oh, well, I reached out to friends and then eventually you run out of friends and then you go, well, now what? So this can like keep that going. And another thing I just wanted to hit on was as we were going this, like a lot of the things that I like to do in my coaching is like finding what works well for people, what are their natural skills and abilities, and then applying it to what they're doing. And what we kind of fell into was like, oh, you do all the PM work for these companies and you can apply that to your job search and you can apply that to Middle Ground. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that's been going?
Yeah, and that's exciting. That's one of the things that I'm most pleased that we arrived at, which is something like, I am a capable professional person and I do a hard job in the world. I'm sure that's true for anybody that you're going to talk to, right? Like there's and when you're in your professional context, you behave differently than you behave in a personal or non-professional context, right? It's different for me to scroll through Netflix at the end of the day than it is for me to sign into work every morning. You know, I'm in a different headspace. I use different tools. I approach problems differently. I have a different hat on. And a lot of what people do in the world is like various forms of like project management, basically. Um, and that's particularly true in my case. Software product management is a lot of project management. It's a lot of this is our strategy. This is how we're going. This is like how we're going to implement it. These are the numbers that we're going to look at that are going to be our indicators of our progress. These are the kinds of rituals we're going to have. This is the cadence on which we're going to review our work. This is the kind of outside help I'm going to need. Like if I have an idea, I'm going to need to bounce it off of somebody. This is the kind of like readiness that I have to reach out to a stranger. Like if you're at work and you need to email somebody in another department that you don't know about because they need to teach you something or what have you, you don't like hem and haw for days about whether or not you should do it. You might, but you shouldn't. There's like a different bias for action when you're in a professional setting, and that was something that was really missing from my job search. And so basically the way I think about it is wielding the tools of my professional self in service of my, I guess, aspirationally professional self in a job search context. And then, I mean, it gets very interesting when you start talking about middle ground, because that effort, that dream is a product design company, and that is a product design effort. And so that translates very well to software product management. I mean, it's not exact, but like we have a vision of something that we want to do. We have a strategy that says this is how we're going to achieve that vision. We have steps that we've defined as part of our strategy that say this is how we're going to execute that strategy. All that stuff, all those tools that work for me in a product management setting apply to if I'm trying to treat historically, the story that I've been telling about middle ground design is that that's an art practice. That's a gifting practice. I need to blow off some steam. What can I go cut in the basement kind of practice? And that's a different frame of mind than I want to achieve this goal. I want to like assert this vision. I want to execute on this vision with a coherent strategy in a deliberate way. And I'd say, for me, I find it to be like that all resonates very well. I can apply this framework of like professional skills to the job search and to middle ground. Because my job is like project management. But for anybody else who might be listening or watching this video, like everybody has skills that you hone in a professional context, and you do that. You try really hard in a professional context because you're getting paid, and it's like you try. Unless you don't, and that there are probably other conversations to have there. Mindset coaching might be helpful for you there, but there are these like ways of thinking about the world that you apply to a particular job, and I found that I was associating that set of skills for me with that job, but taking the skills and the mindset out of the context of your professional life, you can apply that to other things. And that is a powerful tool because that's already a set of skills that you know. And it's like, for me, it's the difference between like, oh, I wonder what I can cut in the basement today. Let's go tinker. And like, this is a goal that I want to accomplish. What am I going to do to accomplish that goal? And that's different for me.
Yeah, and that, I mean, yeah, I see that all the time with clients where it's like they're, software engineers. So it's like, okay, let's break down some of this like problem solving skills you have and how can this apply to the side project you wanted to get going. Or, I remember I had a client, I think they wanted to like start writing regularly. And then we were like, okay, well, you exercise regularly. What made you do that? And she's like, oh, I can just do all those things for writing. And then she did, and then she was like now writing regularly. So yeah, we've all got those kind of like skills we developed in some area that we can apply without like quite realizing.
The
Um,
feedback will be interesting to see the other way. If I get another product management job, like, okay, so what can I apply from my like art making practice
yeah,
that
yeah,
informs work? I mean, there's plenty of interesting like opportunities to kind of feed that stuff back in.
yeah, yeah. And it's cool because like you do product management for other people, and now you're doing it for yourself in Middle Ground Designs. And it's like, why would you not? Like,
Right. Right.
um, cool. And yeah, so what's the impact of having that more uh like that mindset shift of middle ground being before being like, oh, the thing that blow off steam, and now it's like this more professional thing. Like what's the impact of that?
One that I've been thinking about this week is that I think about it more. It's more
Mm,
on my mind. And that's fun. That's kind of a nice, it's avowedly a part of my life that I want to have take up more space. And so it's taking up more space. And so that
yeah,
feels good. It's like,
yeah,
how do you want to spend your time? What do you want to be thinking about? And so it gives me more angles to kind of attach onto thinking about, you know, like business and product development strategy in the as it relates to middle ground. In addition to just like, oh, what's a cool idea for a lamp or what have you. So that's fun. But more concretely, it's kind of similar to the job search piece where on a given, mm, like on a given day, I might like this big header that I use, do middle ground stuff, right? That's again avowedly not helpful, but like it's the same question of like, what should I do today? Like, what piece do I bite off? Um, am I just working on this one project, or is that project part of a larger effort? Like, does that feed into some kind of strategy that's leading me towards something? And so I think that, yeah, okay. So I think that if I were to put a name on it, it would be something like, one benefit is similar in the job search. I've broken down tasks, and so I've got the Kanban board that says this is the project you're working on. This is the next step. So I can go and I can say, I've got an hour tonight. What can I get done off of this list? Bang. Or I've only got 15 minutes. What can I get done off this list? Bang. And so there's, the ease having, that one of the nice things about like business planning frameworks and everything like that is that you do a bunch of decision making up front, and then you don't need to make those decisions again, or you don't need to make those decisions every time. So every
yeah,
time I finish making dinner, I don't need to decide what project do I want to start up or what have you. It's like, this is the next step.
yeah,
So easing the next step, providing a sense of continuity and direction to the work has been valuable to me, by which I mean I'm doing this, this card that I just moved over that says, make 5 prints of whatever. That's a win. I finished that. That's great. And that project is a part of building toward this vision. And so it's not only good because I finished a project and that feels good, but it's good because I finished a project and that is on the right path.
yeah,
And that is a cumulative path. And so that means that as you're finishing, that means that it's a momentum building path. Um, so I think that like having have some of that structure has allowed me to connect the daily tasks to a vision that, and maybe we'll get into this, but when we first started working together, like that is not a vision that I articulate very often.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Tell me about that.
not even like not I don't articulate it that often to myself, let alone to others, because that is a scary thing for me. Um, the quip that I remember from one of our early conversations is that is the dream that shall not be named, right? It's like that is a place. I'm also reading a Brene Brown book right now, so I'm big into vulnerability. There's quite a bit to say about that. Uh, and so I mean, the idea with middle ground, right, is like this is an artistic practice that is born from, some fairly core things that I think about the nature of one's life and the nature of the world, and who we are to one another and what a worthy life might be. So like it's coming from a place that's like real personal. Um, and the fact that and I mean like having a philosophical vision, like and kind of perspective, that's vulnerable. That's a tender thing to begin with.
Yeah.
Now, part of the way that I see this enterprise is that this is that it's not just like, oh, I'm going to live my life and this is kind of my perspective. It's like that it's out in the world, that it's somewhat evangelical, that it's it's an expressed philosophy, not just a thought philosophy. And that's a step further down the vulnerability path, because I'm saying I want to offer this to others and expose this to others. And that, I mean, we can go into the ways in which that's unsettling, but I think probably gotta get the point across of like that's a scary thing. Layered on top of that is like the notion that this is what part of the vision is like, well, what if that was my livelihood? Like, what if that was a business that I ran, and that I made money off of? I mean, people make money doing things, and people make money selling things. That's like a pretty classic way people make money. Well, it's got to be top five. And so that's like an additional level of vulnerability and anxiety, because of everything that comes with money and sustaining livelihood and the need to put food on the table and pay for college and pay for this house and all this stuff. Like the notion that silly little lamps and prints and stuff that I make would be compelling enough, would be universal enough, desirable enough for other people to buy, and for that to be enough to like fulfill the big part of me that's I need to provide for my family. That's a big leap, because right now it's nothing, it's zero. So like there's a very far gulf there. Anyway, so the reason why it's the dream that shall not be named is because like that's gonna be hard. That's a long road. That's not an overnight thing. That's not an easy thing. That's not a sure shot thing.
Yeah.
And is it and so to say that that is what I want, that's tender. That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But it's also empowering, right? So here's our Dr. Brown is the place where you are vulnerable is the place where you are strong. Like ultimately, it's like that's the well of strength, because it's personal, it's heartfelt, it's unique, it's core to who you are, right? And so like that's all worth kind of leaning into. And to tie this back to what we were just talking about, really to treat this framework of treating middle ground kind of like a business, take it seriously. This business of connecting, like I've got this vision, this is how I'm going to achieve it, and this is what I'm going to do today to be going down that path. Forced me, and continues to force me to articulate that vision, verbally often, but also, on the page, or just get it back in my mind. Like, I'm doing this because of this, like allowing that to be a North Star, allowing myself to speak those words, allowing myself to give that notion the sort of dignity of intention and like serious thought, um is feels empowering.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like claiming this very real, very uh powerful part of you. And like, yeah, you talked about like sharing it kind of being scary because it is so personal and it's such a like core piece of who you are and your values. So what was it that gave you, how'd you get the courage to start sharing it?
Yeah, well, okay, so I don't start with, here's what I think is the fundamental nature of human existence in the universe. That's not the reel that I post on Instagram yet. The thing that I post on Instagram is, look, here's a cool thing in my basement. Ooh, I put some ink on a piece of paper, and you can buy it.
Yeah.
It's really valuable for me to have that North Star and to have a consistent set of sort of thought and intention that tracks back to a concrete action. But day to day, you don't need to, you, that a lot of that is not necessary for starting to share what I'm working on.
Yeah.
And I think that that will develop. I think my comfort sharing, like letting the light in on that, will develop over time, and like different aspects of that will show. But like, if I want to, if I want to sell you a pillow that says fish, you don't need to know that, like,
Yeah, yeah. You don't have to like come out and do the big thing and have my, hey, Facebook, here's my big vulnerable post for everybody. It's like, hey, that's great. And maybe there's a time for that. And like, okay, well, you can just start with like expanding your comfort zone and getting it in more manageable chunks that then build to the, here's my manifesto world and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, that's a big like realization for me, is like, because honestly, like, I have long shared pictures of my projects, but they're like often no caption. It's just like a picture of a lamp, and it's just like, made lamp, because that's it. And like, okay, so that's maybe not quite enough story, um but I think part of the reason for holding back on some of that historically has been like, oh, well, then I need to go into this whole thing about like the universe, uh, which is just not necessary. And um, it's sort of, yeah, I don't know. That was just like that was a switch that was good to flip, an important switch to flip. Like,
Yeah.
that can all be true. You can hold all these things to be true. That stuff can even guide you on what projects you pick. I don't care that, sure. But one of the nice things about the structure of how one goes about building, like, vision to strategy to concrete goals, is that, like, it doesn't all directly, it's like, like part of, okay, so I call this thing middle ground design because it's, it's important to me that we tell stories to one another and we find the places where we intersect and yada yada yada. That's stuff for another video. But like, okay, how am I going to bring that into the world? Oh, well, I'm going to have this practice of like taking people's antiques and repurposing them to fit into their lives, or taking images from their past and like presenting them in a way that's modern and fresh, and that they can put on a shirt or, carry with them in a way that they can't carry their mother's china with them. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Oh, okay. So then, like, I don't need to tell the big story in order to tell the little story about, like, continuity of memory and story.
Yeah.
I don't even really need to tell that. I just need to tell the story about, like, my dad made this thing when he was in college, and I found it in an old box. So I took it and I blew it up and I gave it some crazy colors, and now it's on a shirt. Yeah. Like, it's a project story that leads up to a sort of philosophical beat that is itself leads up to, what I hold kind of like super true down the line. And so it's kind of fractal in a way. Like there's enough to go into at each stage that you don't necessarily need to like overshare or reveal your entire.
Yeah. Yeah. The story about here's my grandfather's antiques put together in this cool way that help us feel connected to him and celebrate him and all that stuff. Like doesn't then have to be connected to like, and here's the treaty of why that's important. It's like, we get that's important. That's super cool. Like,
yeah, it's cool enough. Yeah, you're fine.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Any other wins or results or anything that you want to share that were a result from the coaching?
Yeah, totally. We haven't talked about this that much, but so having a little bit of structure to work, to job search and to middle ground. The other swim lane that I have is like my house. So I have all this time. I also need to, paint the fence and all this stuff. So that's in there. Exercise, that's in there now, as like the frame, like having a little bit of structure in particular areas has allowed me to kind of start thinking about layering on other things that can fit as well, right? And so really one of the underlying currents that exists here is like consistency, and like incremental progress, which are sort of broadly applicable to basically any problem that you might be trying to solve. That stuff I'm still kind of early days for me, so I'm not making like too grand claims, but like that can have kind of like trickle out benefits of like just kind of getting everything, like helping you get everything else in order.
Yeah.
And so that's been good,
Awesome.
That's good.
Yeah, sweet. Cool. Anything else that you want to share?
Nothing specific, I don't think.
Okay. Was there anything that was surprising about the coaching?
Yeah, not to. This is not a dig at the expertise that you bring or coaching, but like when obviously I'm a fairly loquacious guy, and it did surprise me, as we were going on, that like a lot of the stuff like I know a lot of some of the stuff like I arrived at in our conversation because like you gave me a lot of space to explore verbally, ramble, but to explore this, to explore the space. And so it's like I was kind of surprised that you were such a good kind of shepherd rather than a guide. I don't know if I necessarily would use those terms. That's just what came to my head now, but like it's like having somebody to talk to can be like 80% of what you need. It's like you like, and I think that's true about therapy, and I think that's true about a lot of different things. It's like let's just open it up and like we'll figure it out together. But like a lot of our problem, like for me, when we started the coaching journey, I was just describing how I felt like I was not like internally consistent, and that I was like kind of at war with myself, and it was like none of this is like fitting together right. And the nice thing about that space is like it kind of all seems like it should fit together fine. I just can't, it's just not quite fitting. And so I just need some help to like let's all like just like talk about this and like kind of figure it all out and like have it fit into place. And so I would imagine that when you talk to other people like me, it's like probably a similar pattern emerges where like we know how to identify, like when we start talking about our problems, like I feel like people are probably like more observant and are more aware of their situation than they let themselves think. And so like having an outside perspective can be so valuable at like just like unblocking the flow of your thoughts.
Yes. Oh, that's exactly it. Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, why'd you stop there? Like, tell me more about that. It's like, oh, well, I guess I usually do stop there when I'm, cycling at 12:30 in the morning as I'm trying to go to sleep. It's like, you get into that's when you talk about like people get into a loop. And so part of the value of, I think the kind of coaching that you do is like, you can see the dam, you can see the blockage and be like, well, you actually, what you said there doesn't actually, that's not the same as what you said over here. Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah.
So I was kind of surprised at that seemed to me to be part of the nature of kind of the coaching that you do, is like extracting, like unblocking some of that, which is cool.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You nailed it. It is just removing the blocks and doing it through, asking questions that help you or allow you to arrive at like what you need to do, or what you kind of need to integrate those things. Like, it's not about me giving you the frameworks and all the stuff and be like, oh, do all these things. Like, no, you got it in there. There's just things in the way that keep us from seeing it or using it or being able to make it work. So we get rid of that muck. And then it's like, oh, okay, now the things fall into place. Cool. Let's go do something with that.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That that was the exact experience I was going for. So glad it shaped up. Cool. And actually, one last thing. Do you have another couple of minutes?
Yeah, I do.
Wait, there was just one. Yeah, I also just wanted to bring up the making something available for sale for the first time.
Aha, big goal.
Can you talk a little bit about that, of like any like fears around it, and what you like, how you overcame it, and how that all came about?
Yeah. So, I just touched on this notion of incremental progress, and so I never sell any of mine. I very rarely ask people to buy my art. And it's just like how, I don't lead with, here's my theory about the universe, nor is it best to lead with like, here's my fully formed e-commerce site that has a variety of offerings in several disciplines, that range in price point from $1.50 to $600, that's like all very slick and, is fully formed. Like, these things don't come fully formed into the world. And I think that not that I would have told you that it had to, but we talked about the vulnerability piece of like sharing some of my like philosophical beliefs. There's an inherent vulnerability to like, I made a thing, would you like to buy it? Do you like it? I like it. Do you like it? Do you like me? Am I good? Like, that's all at play. And so that makes starting to sell things somewhat challenging. At least it has for me. I think that's something that one can get over. Hopefully it will, but like, I've not gotten over that yet. Anyway, so I had a goal in my last sprint to make, so like part of the middle ground project is do a project, iterate on it, figure out a design, figure out a way to produce that, and then offer it for sale. And so then you've taken your kind of gifting practice, you used it to create a product, and now that product is for sale. And ideally, that's scalable because you figured out a manufacturing solution that works for you. So and that's how I'm going to build up inventory, like a catalog over time. But I don't have the catalog now. So how do you start? Well, do a one. And so I picked a project at the beginning of the last sprint, and I said, my goal is by the end of this 2 weeks to have this be available for sale. Strictly speaking, when I set that goal, it was add an e-commerce section to my website so that people can get it for sale. And in discussion about that goal, you advised me not to get hung up on the solution and to think instead about the outcome. And the outcome of that was someone can buy a thing from me. And it's not important that it's through, Squarespace's integration with Shopify that, is paid by the, like, that's the solution, the stack is not important. The outcome, people know that I have a thing to sell, and there is a way that they can indicate to me that they want to buy it. That's the goal. And so I didn't get to adding an e-commerce thing to my site, but I did change the name of that ticket from add e-commerce to middleground.design to make it possible for someone to buy a thing from you. And so instead of like spending a bunch of time building an online store, I made one Instagram post that said, I'm selling these prints. This is what they look like. They're $15. DM me if you're interested. And I consider that to be a huge win because I have never done that before. And that sort of breaks the seal a little bit. And, it's a really good, that's a very good lesson in not getting hung up on the solution. So that was great.
Not getting hung up on the solution or the part of the outcome that you have no control over, right? Like, it's not about making a bunch of money on this first sale or all that other stuff. Like, it's just like, because that fear of putting yourself out there, like, do you want to buy this? Do you not like it? Do you not like me? Is it like, like that, start to overcome that by, I put this thing out for sale in the most minimal way possible. I didn't get hung up over how people are going to pay me and spend 3 months looking at different ways to get paid. That all as an excuse to keep putting this off and letting all that drag on. You just, take the little step, put it out, $15. All right, people want it. No, cool. Either way. And I didn't die. I still have friends. We're okay here. Maybe I can put out another one.
And my friends didn't all immediately DM me being like, you're fucking pathetic.
Yeah.
This is so sad. I can't believe you're trying to sell that. You have a kid to think about. You make me say, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Maybe they're all thinking it. I don't think so. But, it's but incrementally getting more and more out there.
Yeah, and that's like a big part of the overcoming the fear process that I work with clients. Is like really understanding the fear, breaking it down, taking those small steps that are continually outside your comfort zone, then acknowledging your progress and the steps that you're making along the way so you can feel good about them and remind yourself that it's about the process and about what you can control and about your movement forward rather than giving everyone else the power of how they respond. And to help you decide if what you did was good and if you're worthy or not. So that was just a beautiful example of it, and it made me so happy when I saw that the fish available, $15. You want it's all it's got to be.
Yeah, right. No, that's great. I loved it.
All right, sweet. Well, thank you very much, Sam. I appreciate you hopping on. And do you have a Middle Ground Design way of people finding you?
Yeah, folks can follow me on Instagram at middleground.design, or you can go to my portfolio website, which might have e-commerce sometime in the future, which is also middleground.design.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. And for more stories like this, head on over to McCarthyMindsetCoaching.com. All right. Thank you.